Marcus Webb had learned long ago that disappointment was quieter than people expected. It didn't announce itself with slammed doors or raised voices. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? It arrived softly, like the moment a candle flame gave up against the wind, barely a sound, just darkness where light had been. He felt it now as he buttoned his jacket in the elevator, descending from the 32nd floor of Callaway Enterprises, a place he had dared to believe might change his life. The interview had lasted 42 minutes. He had counted. He knew the exact moment it ended, not when the HR manager stood and extended her hand, but 7 minutes earlier, when the panel's questions shifted from genuine curiosity to polite formality, the kind of careful courtesy people used when they had already decided but weren't ready to say so. Marcus had seen that shift before. He recognized it the way you recognize weather, changing before the rain actually falls. He thanked them warmly anyway, shook every hand, smiled without bitterness, and walked out carrying the weight that every single parent knows, the particular heaviness of failing not just yourself, but the small person waiting at home who depends entirely on you. His son Daniel was 7 years old, obsessed with dinosaurs, afraid of thunderstorms, and completely unaware that his father had spent 3 weeks preparing for a job that would have meant stability, health insurance, and maybe, just maybe, a little breathing room between 1 month and the next. Marcus stepped out of the building into the sharp afternoon air and told himself what he always told himself in moments like this. Keep moving, keep showing up. Something will come. He had reached the bottom of the wide marble steps. Outside when he heard it, running footsteps, urgent and purposeful, not the casual jog of someone catching a bus, but the determined stride of someone chasing something that actually mattered. "Excuse me, Mr. Webb, Marcus." He turned. The man running toward him was not the HR manager or one of the panel members. It was Richard Callaway himself, the CEO whose name was on the building, a man in his late 50s with silver hair and the kind of calm authority that usually never needed to move faster than a deliberate walk. He was slightly breathless. Marcus stood still, genuinely confused. "I'm glad I caught you," Richard said, stopping a few feet away, collecting himself. "I was watching the interview from the observation room. I do that sometimes with senior candidates and stay back. Observe without influencing the panel." Marcus waited, uncertain what was coming. About halfway through, my assistant handed me a note. "Something we missed during the background review of your file. I want to ask you about it directly, man-to-man, if that's all right." Marcus nodded slowly. 3 years ago, Richard said. "You were project lead at Hensley Manufacturing. The Durango contract, the one that nearly bankrupted the division. Our research showed the project failed, and you resigned shortly after. The panel marked that as a red flag, unexplained departure under difficult circumstances." Marcus looked at him steadily. "That's accurate. What the file didn't include," Richard continued, "was a letter. We found it this morning in a secondary archive from an industry review board. It was written by the workers in your division, 11 people, submitted on your behalf to the review board when the company tried to blame the project failure on your team. They wrote that you had identified the structural flaw in the contract 6 months before it collapsed, that you reported it formally in writing 3 times, that management overruled you each time, and that when everything fell apart, you stood in front of your team and told the executives the fault was yours alone to protect 11 jobs, including 2 people who were about to become fathers for the first time." Marcus said nothing. His jaw tightened slightly, the only visible sign that this conversation was touching something real. "You fell on a sword that wasn't yours to fall on," Richard said quietly. "And then you walked away without telling anyone why." Marcus exhaled slowly. Those 11 people had mortgages, kids. One of them, Gerald, his wife, had just started chemotherapy. What was I going to do? Protect my reputation while they lost everything? Richard was quiet for a moment. A taxi moved past on the street behind them. The city continued its indifferent noise. The panel scored you low on leadership confidence, Richard finally said. They felt your answers were too understated. Too careful, not assertive enough, Marcus almost smiled. I've learned that the loudest person in the room isn't always the one who's thought the hardest about the consequences. Richard looked at him for a long moment, then did something Marcus didn't expect. He extended his hand, not the formal handshake of an interview closing, but the deliberate grip of one person choosing to recognize another. The position we interviewed you for was operations director, Richard said. But I have a different conversation I'd like to have with you about a role we've been struggling to define for 2 years. Someone who can tell us the truth before it becomes expensive. Someone our people will actually trust. Marcus shook his hand, steady and certain. I'd like to hear it, he said. What followed over the next 3 weeks was not a fairy tale. It was work, negotiation, real conversations about expectations and values and what kind of company Callaway Enterprises wanted to be. Marcus asked hard questions. Richard answered most of them honestly. The role that emerged was built around accountability and transparency, things the company needed, and Marcus understood at a level that couldn't be taught in a business school. Daniel was asleep when Marcus got home that evening. A dinosaur book open across his chest, the bedside lamp still on. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed for a minute, watching his son breathe, feeling the particular gratitude that arrives, not in the big moments, but in the quiet ones. The moments when you realize that keeping going, even when it cost everything, was exactly the right thing to do. Character, it turns out, rarely announces itself at the beginning of the story. Sometimes it only becomes visible to the right person at the right moment, when they're paying close, enough attention, and willing to run after what they almost let walk away. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that quiet strength and honest character are always worth something, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe to our channel. Kindness, true stories for more powerful stories. About real courage, second chances, and the moments that define us. Your support means everything. Thank you for being part of this community.